This video is called Subconscious Reprogramming. I'm going to explain it to you from an internal aspect, how to change it, and what the subconscious essentially does, and what this is. So subconscious, the subconscious is essentially the emotional part of the brain that, depending how intense the emotional experience is, the part of the subconscious clings to that experience and makes a memory out of it, and then defines what something is based off its perception of that from their experiences. So if they don't necessarily have the actual or factual definition of something, or their version or their perception of something, they are essentially defining it off their experiences of it. So subconscious reprogramming is changing that, but from an internal aspect, because manifestation starts internally. So Nero's definition is essentially shifting internally and not being emotionally dependent on seeing your reality change. So from knowing and aligning with the version of you that you desire, if you get in a state of meditation or relaxation, you can essentially through that have visualization or create a memory. Then with the memory you can emotionally intensely experience it through looping the memory and focusing on the memory. You can emotionally intensely experience it, and then through that, once you say I am, the subconscious obeys. So from doing that and having an emotionally intense experience with it and visualizing yourself as that version of yourself, you then essentially, from that point of when you say I am this version of myself, you are that version of yourself that you saw in the visualization, if you assume that the visualization was real and it took place. And through that, because from that point on you're then consciously that version of yourself where you know it's already took place, you then act. So because there's a new cause, a new frequency, a new awareness, a new version of you internally, you self-validate yourself. Therefore, through self-validation, you're not then validated by reality, which is external. So you're not emotionally dependent on seeing your reality change, so seeing what's going on externally, because you self-validate yourself. So subconscious reprogramming, if I look down here, it's because I have a whiteboard written. So subconscious reprogramming is changing your self-worth, perception, beliefs, focus, definitions, habits, mental attitude, concentration, and frequency, which is essentially awareness. And consciousness, which is also awareness. So when you can change these things and like write them down, and let's say your definition of words from the new version of you, you're then essentially, when you are then experiencing them things, or when you do then manifest them things, you're essentially manifesting them with new definitions and new perceptions of them. Therefore, you're having new experiences of it. So, for example, if someone, let's say, wants to be famous but doesn't want to be seen, they then essentially find ways or have to find ways to somewhat cover themselves because they have essentially a negative perception of being seen or of being seen or of being famous. But to them, it's not that it's necessarily a negative perception, it's just to them. So if they just change their perception or definition or both of it, then when they are then manifesting that, it will then come through in a positive experience because they now have positive definition of it. Therefore, positive experiences will then take place, but they have to change the definition of them words. So, for example, I'll give you another example. If, let's say, someone has struggled financially a lot, they will have negative perceptions of money. So when they're trying to get money, they'll wonder why so many problems will come with money. And it's because they have a negative perception of money. But if they change their perception of money and then look at it from a positive aspect, they will then start having positive experiences of it. But they have to change their definitions and perceptions of money first for that to take place. Otherwise, they'll still be manifesting money, but they'll be having negative experiences of it because they have negative definitions and perceptions of it in their subconscious, which they have to change to therefore change their beliefs. And then that's where you then shift your focus because now you have new beliefs. And through that, with new definitions, you therefore have new habits. So therefore your concentration is on different things, essentially, because you have changed the cause. So you're already operating from that new version of yourself. So when you are doing, then doing actions, essentially there's a new cause because you're operating from a new frequency, a new awareness, so it's a new cause. So faith without works is dead. So if you don't act on what you're aligned with, essentially, then it's not necessarily going to take place. You still have to act, but because it's a new cause, it's a new version of you doing it, therefore new results will take place. And then mental attitude, so understanding that highs and lows are normal, understanding that excitement fades away, as in like, once you experience something the first time, you're going to be excited. By experiencing it more than once, the excitement goes. So that's like not letting things control you, like money and vanity and stuff like that. Understanding that you're still, everything you have in abundance internally. So you don't need nothing external, and therefore everything external will come to you because you're not in need of it. So it will attract to you. Concentration as well, so that's where you essentially focus, because focus is essentially the biggest part of manifestation, because that's where you're putting your attention. Where you put your attention is where you're putting your energy, because that's where all your focus is at. And consciousness and frequency, that's just awareness. So coming to a higher awareness, understanding that everything you have in abundance. Understanding that you self-validate yourself internally, therefore, because you act as that version of yourself from them and are not attached to this version of yourself, so you're detached from it because you know it's already taken place once you're aligned from that. Once you align as that version of yourself, you know, then this is already taken place, so you detach from it with certainty because you're certain that it's taken place. And because you've emotionally intensely experienced it through the visualization, looping it, you've emotionally intensely felt it, you then can also change the reprogramming of your subconscious through what I said, your self-worth, changing your perception on your self-worth, your perception, your beliefs, your focus, so where you put your focus, your definitions of words, your habits, your mental attitude, where you put your concentration, and frequency and consciousness, which is just awareness. So it's just being more aware, being more self-aware. Being more self-aware as well, that could be stuff like, let's say, not being so harsh on yourself. So some people could be extremely harsh on themselves and have like very high standards for themselves. Of course, this is good, but essentially, I wouldn't say punishing yourself, but like punishing yourself for people that essentially have what they say is self-sabotage. You don't always have to do. If you can find ways to understand that highs and lows are normal, you will then still have high standards for yourself, but you won't be so harsh on yourself. You'll see the mistakes as learning rather than failure.